Hey everyone, Sei'nen here again. And you know what day it is. Today is Tuesday, patch notes just get released. And just like we do in every new patch with this new card updates and new cards, we're going to give you all a patch notes breakdown. So this video is going to be a patch note breakdown for the first 30 minutes to 40 minutes or so. And then at the halfway point through the video, you'll have 15, you heard that right, 15 deck recommendations from myself for you to try out tomorrow with the new patch. Each of the new decks is kind of using some of the cards that got buffed, and then at the end just a couple like old decks that got small buffs, and kind of go from there. So I'm gonna start out with the patch notes breakdown. If you want, you can use the timestamps below, and I think I also have the timestamp listed up here in the video or the other way to skip over to the deck recommendations if that's all you care about. Otherwise, if you're actually interested in my thoughts on the patch, then stick here right now as we begin. So we have patch 3.19, and honestly, man, I love the art for Ibaaros. Obviously, this is spoiling. You know, this card's gonna get a small buff later, but this art is amazing. I can't wait for the next champion, Aatrox, and all the darking that come with it. But anyways, let's go ahead and start actually with the patch notes. We can skip this part. This is just patch preview that they released on Friday. Yeah, whatever. Let's start off with Varus. So Varus just gets a small buff. Now instead of being target 8 allies, now it's only 7. I think this is actually a pretty good buff. I mean, there were some decks that sometimes had an awkward spot leveling up Varus. Now Varus should level up a lot easier, and I think this is only going to help in stuff like Varus Pantheon. Now, Varus Action gets other nerfs, as you see down later, so I don't know if that's still a deck, but at least Varus should be able to level up quicker in stuff like Varus Pantheon or something like that. So I think it's a pretty healthy nerf, a pretty healthy buff. I don't think it's going to change a ton, but it should make him a little bit more of a threat earlier in the game compared to like having to wait one more turn and one more spell to actually level him up. Then we have Jinx, and Jinx gets an amazing buff. So now, before, she only used to give you a super mega death rocket when you used to empty your hand. Now, when she levels up the first time, she will give you a super mega death rocket. So right away, as soon as you level up the Jinx, you're already getting 4 damage that you can push to the opponent's face. That is a big difference. You're pretty much getting a decimate for 1 mana, 1 more extra decimate that you would have gotten otherwise. So now it doesn't matter if the opponent is able to remove Jinx, because you still get the value from that first rocket right away. I think this buff is huge and should make Jinx be very prevalent in a lot of decks in the meta, but we'll see, because there is a lot of like control tools these days, so maybe it's not gonna be as crazy as I think it is. But this is a really good buff if you tell me, you know. Let's go ahead to the next champion that got buffed. That's going to be Jax. And similar to Varus, Jax is just getting a small adjustment to the amount of, I guess, requirement for his level up. So now, instead of 15 damage, now it's only 12 damage. This means that Jax is also going to level up a lot quicker, which is also really nice, because that means that when Jax levels up, especially if he's on the field, that means you really get the light of Katarina to have overrun for the rest of the game, which can be pretty good in certain decks. I don't know if this level up actually makes a big difference. I think it's going to be some edge cases where it does. I think for the most part, you usually tend to level Jax in the deck anyway, so I don't think it's a big deal. Usually most players are playing Jax already leveled up, but there are certain situations where he's on the field and you need just that extra 3 damage, and now you don't need to, because now you already have the 12 damage here from the new buff. So could be good. It's a healthy buff. I don't think it's going to make Jax OP, but I also don't know how much it's actually going to help him. Then we get kind of like technically it's a buff, but it's more like an adjustment. And this is to Gwen level 2 ability. So if you guys didn't know, leveled up Gwen doesn't fizzle, whether you kill or stun the Gwen. As soon as the Gwen goes in the attack phase, that's it. That skill is going to go through no matter what, unless the opponent has 79. With level 2 Gwen, it did not work like that. Level 2 Gwen, if level 2 Gwen got stunned out of combat, or she got killed during the combat, then she wasn't doing any damage with her skill anymore. That means that in certain situations, level 2 Gwen was actually worse than level 1. And that's exactly what Brad is saying here, right? They don't want a level 2 to feel worse than a level 1 in a lot of cases. So that's why they're making the level 2 ability do at least 2 damage minimum. So that way, even if Gwen dies or gets stunned or get weak or whatever, her skill will still push just as much damage as if she was level 1. I think it's a fair change. And actually does matter a lot in certain situations where you have leveled up Gwen, or there were times where I would like, I guess, big brain the opponent and let them level up the Gwen, knowing that I can then kill it and not have to worry, or I can freeze her or something like that, right? So at least this way, it doesn't matter if the Gwen is frozen, she's always gonna do at least 2. Then we go to the nerfs. And right off the bat, Riot is giving us some of the best news that every player in Legends of Runeterra is celebrating today. Seraphine got nerfed. And this is not a small nerf. This is a big nerf. So now Seraphine, instead, and actually maybe I should zoom in a little bit on this one. Yeah, there we go. That's a little bit better. Sorry about that. I think it was a little bit farther than I realized as I was recording. Seraphine now, instead of just 6 spells for her to level up, she needs to see 9 new spells. Wow, that's a big delay, right? Because now it's not so easy to just level her up. I mean, Sun Spinner is still giving her 4, but now you have to pretty much use double Sun Spinner to actually level her up. I think it's actually a much bigger nerf than people give it credit for, because it's likely now that Seraphine is gonna take a lot longer to level up, to the point that why not just play Karma in certain situations, right? But obviously Seraphine should still level up before turn, so she should still be better than Karma in a lot of situations. That's huge. That's huge. It's gonna take a lot of resources to actually get to 9 compared to 6, which means that once Seraphine is actually leveled up, you're gonna have less spells to actually take advantage of her level up. So wow. I like this nerf. I think it's a fair nerf. I'm actually kind of scared, might be a little bit too much for Seraphine, but honestly, who cares? I think all of us are tired of Seraphine and her package. Talking of her package, this card also deserved the nerf. So now Fan Club President goes from a 4 cost to a 5 cost. So it's still just as annoying as it was before, kind of manifesting anything from any region, but it's kind of getting the Telescope treatment. Remember Telescope? Yeah, Looping Telescope used to be a 2 cost, and now it's a 3 cost, and people stopped complaining about him as much. Similar way, by costing 1 more, it does make her a lot less mana efficient, and makes it less of a power play, right? Because now opponent has to spend an extra mana on her on a card that just has 2 stat line and has the potential to whiff, because there's some bad 5 cost spells. But there's also a lot of good ones. So, I think it's a fair nerf as well. I think straight up, maybe it doesn't kill the card because it's still probably good enough with Seraphine and with Barkeep, but it's very good enough. Which, by the way, as you can see here, we have no Barkeep nerf, right? So that's one card that I feel like should have gotten nerf from the Seraphine package. I think Barkeep is really what was carrying a lot of these Seraphine decks. So I wouldn't be surprised if eventually we do see a Barkeep nerf, but, for now, we're not having back alley bar, not Barkeep, back alley bar. We're not seeing the landmark get nerfed just yet, but it is what it is. I don't expect to see a lot of Seraphine anymore, but maybe I'm wrong, because she could still be very, very powerful, even at 9+ spells. Then we go to a change to Bane. So now the Bane, the Tumble, not the Bane herself, Tumble goes from 3 cost to 4 cost. So that means it's now costs 1 more when you get the first Tumble, and obviously it still gets reduced by 1 every turn as long as Bane is on the field. But just that initial cost of 4 means that you can just combo out with it the turn right after Bane gets summoned on the field. So it's a lot less likely for your opponent to be able to use multiple tumbles in the span of like 2 to 3 turns, because now they're spending 1 more mana per tumble until Bane levels up. So because the tumble now costs 4, they made an adjustment to Bane where now instead of reducing the tumble cost by 3, she just reduces the tumble straight up to 0. So obviously it's kind of the same functionality wise, it's almost the same thing, right? Except that now instead of reducing by 3, it's going to reduce by 0. Actually, it's not exactly the same thing, right? Because now that it doesn't reduce the cost by 3, because can the cost, I guess the cost doesn't go negative, or does it? Like, can the cost of a card go negative, which means that it's kind of like placed around prank, right? So like before, if you had a tumble that costs 1 for any reason, wouldn't the tumble be -2? And if the opponent pranks it, it would still cost 0. Now, since it just reduced to 0, someone can prank it and go to 2. Maybe that's why they have it listed here under nerfs. Someone could verify that for me. But regardless, I think functionality-wise, for like 99% of the interactions that you're going to run into the game, this is pretty much the same. Really, the big deal is right here. And that's going to slow down Bane a lot. But I don't think it's going to slow it down enough. I think Bane now is going to be the card that kind of be dominating. And it's going to continue dominating pretty much every Demacia deck. So yeah, going to be pretty crazy. Get ready for the Legends of Runeterra of Bane. Then we get Elise. Wow, this card has avoided some nerfs for a very, very long time and has been present in so many tournament wins, and so many good players, right, are known because of their skills with leasing. From leasing Zoe to leasing action, this card has been present in a lot of decks. So leasing now, instead of cast 8 spells for him to level up, now it's going to be cast 10. So 2 more spells before he can level up is a big deal. It slows down the leasing a lot. Is that enough to actually kill the card? I don't think so. I don't think it is. I think it's a healthy nerf. I mean, leasing wasn't crazy already as it is. I mean, leasing action is really the only leasing deck right now, because leasing Nami is dead and leasing Zoe wasn't doing that well either. But I mean, the slowdown is a lot. At least leasing action still gets momentous choice to kind of cheat out quick leasing level ups. I don't know. I feel like this is enough of a slowdown to not make leasing any good anymore. I wouldn't play leasing action anymore, not only because of leasing, but obviously because of this. So not only are you nerfing leasing, but you're also nerfing the 2 other cards in that leasing action deck. So in general, I don't think leasing has any other deck at the moment, even if you had a way to actually trigger 10 spells, you know, quickly. The only way that I can see you cheaply doing 10 spells is like Victor Lee Sin. Maybe Victor Lee Sin doesn't really care that much about this nerf, but Victor Lee Sin is a little bit of a French option as well. So it's a good nerf. I don't expect to see Lee Sin anymore, at least not for a while, until we get even more cheap spells, which I think is going to be the future of Runeterra anyways. But let's move on to the next nerf that I was kind of referring to, and it's going to be to Action's Landmark. Action has been a staple of the game for as long as he has been out in the game, and now his landmarks get to suffer the consequences. So now instead of countdown 8, they're both going to be countdown 9. And this is a big deal as well. I think that extra turn that we're slowing down both landmarks makes a big difference, right? It could be the difference between the opponent finding lethal against you or not. Does it kill action? I don't think so. I don't think it kills action. I think action is still going to be really good at what he does, but it does make his high rolls or some of his decks a bit less annoying to deal with, especially if they get action on turn 2. So I like this. It's a good change. I just don't know how much it's actually going to affect and kind of make a difference in the grand scheme of things. So let's go ahead to the next one. So this is going to be kind of like a nerf to Swain. So obviously Swain got a big buff last patch where the Swain ended up getting overwhelmed. I guess Riot assumed that was a little bit too much, so they decided to bring that down a little bit and bring Swain down from 4 attack to 3 attack, and in the level of form from 5 to 4. This now allows opponents to be able to block Swain more effectively with something that has like 4 health in terms of the level 2 and prevent the Swain from just clearing out the board. Of course, the Swain player could still have removal to that unit, like if it's damaged, they could just flock it while it's in the attack phase, but this at least gives it a little bit more counterplay. I think it's a good preemptive nerf in case that Swain is going to get a little bit crazy, so I don't blame Riot from kind of taking this approach early on. So fair nerf. Swain should still be pretty decent in some of those decks like Misfortune Swain, in my opinion. Then we get a huge nerf. Yes. This card has been terrorizing so many players recently, as you all remember, for Nami decks. Ionian Tailstone is probably one of the most annoying cards to deal with in this whole game. And they pretty much just butcher the card. Butcher the card. I don't see how this card is played again. So they changed Healing Potion and Homecoming, which are literally the 2 best options in the card, and probably 2 of the best options of any one of the Tailstones, for Gruesome Theater and Ritual Renewal. Now, Ritual Renewal got a buff a patch ago, or might have been 2 patches ago now, so it is cheaper. It's no longer 7 mana. I think it's like 4 mana, and it draws you 1. Gruesome Theater is also not horrible, but I don't think I want to pay 3 mana for Gruesome Theater. So I don't see, and the same thing with Ritual, I think it's too much mana for that, for something that's not like actively helping me win the game in a way, right? I don't see how this is played again. They gave you a worse recall and they gave you a worse heal, right? Because the whole reason of the Homecoming, why it was so good, is because you could also recall your own unit to save it, and it's synergized with like Ahri decks, etc. So I think this card is just that. It's gonna join the rest of the other Tailstones that I never see play, like Bandle City, like Targon. because I really don't see a world where I use most of these spells. At most, Gruesome Theater is the only one that's good, but one good option is not enough, because at that point, I'd rather just main the Gruesome Theater, right? So, doesn't really make any sense. So, let's move on. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Tailstones. Shaman Wing goes from Burst to Focus. Pretty good nerf. This card is probably one of the best one-drops in the whole game, the Bastan Disciple. And obviously the card that it creates, the Shaman Wing, you still get a lot of value from this. Making it focus just means that you won't be able to use it as a burst free blocker in certain situations, which can matter a lot, especially when you're playing Ionia and you're trying to defend against those open attacks. So I think it's a good nerf. It's a good fair nerf. It still should be really, really good card in most decks that you're going to see out there. So just expect to keep running into the Disciple as much as possible in Ionian decks. And then we get two big nerfs. So this is kind of like completely changing what it means to be Demacia. So Relentless Pursuit, now it no longer grants you +1/+1. Now it just rallies. Just rally. I wish they would have put just rally on the card. That would have been hilarious. Just rally instead of rally. But wow, so there is a pretty significant nerf, right? I mean, you almost always use Golden Ages over Relentless Pursuit because the +1/+1 was obviously always worse than the barrier. Not always, most cases worse than the barrier. Now it doesn't even give you that. Now it's just a 4-mana rally. In my opinion, the fact that it's still 4 mana makes this card still really, really good, right? It's still a good card. It's definitely worse, but it's still a good card for decks like Taric. But I don't think Riot believes in that, since they're saying sorry Taric over here. I think it's still a good enough card for for decks that really want to rally, like Taric Poppy. It just won't be like super splashable everywhere else, because Golden Ages got nerfed from 4 cost to 5 cost. So it still gives the barrier, but now it's 5 cost. So now, is the extra mana worth the barrier versus just using Relentless Pursuit? That's going to be the question that a lot of the Demacia decks are going to have to start making from now on. It's like, okay, do I pay 1 extra mana so that I can have the barrier protection, or do I just go for 4 and have nothing else except for rally? I think I'd rather just play it for 4. I think I still rather play it for 4. Yeah, we lose the barrier, which makes it a lot riskier on what you can attack with now. This is huge. This is huge. I think a lot of the Demacia decks are going to suffer for this because of this nerf. And actually should help out things like Throws and Control maybe come back into the meta. Maybe not, because Bane is still a thing, and Bane can still do a lot of damage because she kind of pseudo rallies. But you know, these cards are still very, very good in my opinion. So yeah, nice nerf. I think it's well deserved. Rallies have been dominated for way too long. I can't believe that this card used to be 3 mana and fast. Rally used to be 3 mana and fast. Remember that, kids. Wow. Curse of the Tomb gets a nerf that I think is a little bit unnecessary. So it goes from 2 cost to 3 cost. And I think this nerf was more out of hype, out of everything else, right? When this card got revealed, so many people were going crazy about it. And it didn't really end up shaking out as strong as people thought it would. Yeah, you have Action Seraphine, you have like Action Varus, and you have some like Freljord, Renekton decks that were using this card, but it never felt like completely toxic, right? I mean, it is strong. It was strong at 2 mana, pretty much like a Battle Fury, pretty much, but it wasn't like crazy. I don't think any deck that ran this card had like a crazy win rate. So I think this was a little bit unnecessary. Maybe Riot is trying to kind of preemptively nerf something now that Seraphine decks are out of the way. I don't think it was needed, but you know, with 3 costs, I think the decks that want to run it will still run it, which is maybe like some Renekton decks, because at 3 costs to double up your over 1 damage is still worth it in most cases, compared to paying like 8 mana for Battle Fury, right? So for the Tryndamere spell. So yeah, unnecessary nerf in my opinion. Saga Seeker deserves it though. Goes from a 1/2 to a 1/1. This card dominates a lot of like those Pantheon decks, right? Because of how big it could get and how quickly. At 1 health, it's a lot easier to potentially remove him. That 1 extra health was literally usually what a lot of opponents needed to have their Saga Seeker survive. So there is a very good nerf because, yeah, if you drop down Saga Seeker on turn 1 and you were able to buff it with something like, I don't know, the Lodestone on turn 2, then all of a sudden the Saga Seeker just kind of takes over the game, like Riot is saying right here, and just kind of run away with the game. I think he needs to be. I think this is a good change, and it will be better. I still run him in Pantheon decks, so there's no reason to still not run him in Pantheon. The Fade just ends up making up for it. Now, the Hookmaster, on the other hand, gets changed from a 1-1 to a 0-1. Hookmaster, it was probably the best of the Weapon Masters. So this nerf, I think, is well deserved. The equipment provides a lot of value. The craziest part is that I still think this card is still used in every one of the decks that it was in before. The 1 extra damage does matter, because now it's not going to be a fearsome blocker, for example. But the equipment that it gives us and how splashable it is in a lot of Ionia and Nasus strategies, I feel still means that it's going to be a really, really good card to run in those type of decks. So, good nerf. I still expected to see it play in a lot of decks. And now we get to a bunch of buffs. A bunch of buffs. Now, I'm going to give you my thoughts on a lot of these variety buffs, but I have no idea how some of these buffs are going to shake out, to be honest. Because some of these decks I'm having a hard time imagining exactly what they will run. For example, let's start right here with the Yodos. So the Yodos get kind of 3 buffs all in one. You have Paparo, which now, instead of manifesting a Yodel in your hand, it just straight up summons a Yodel, right? So it's going to just summon a Yodel into the field. Which I think is pretty crazy. I think it's pretty crazy, right? So now you get to summon a Yodel right away with Paparo. So Paparo... Wait a second. Why doesn't this have a restriction? Wait a second. Did Riot messed up? Shouldn't this say... As Bandle has something that I said, we should decide... Wait a second. Shouldn't this say like summon at 3 costs or less Yodel? Or even like a 1 or 2 cost? Why does this card just say Yodel? Wait a second. Did Riot messed up? Like, is this card gonna be able to summon just anything in the game? No way, right? Create a random Yodel in hand was what it was before. Now it just says summon a Yodel. Did they not put a restriction on this? Aren't there some Yodels that are just going to be like complete high rolls? Am I going crazy? Wait. Wait. If there's no restriction, can you just summon like Mirror Mage, Arsenal, Gunners, Shark Trainer? Like, can you cheat out any of these cards for just 3 mana? There's no way. And it's also Manifest. Manifest a Yodel. Am I reading this right? No, it's not summon, right? It cannot be summoned. I think it's just... What? Okay, so before it was create a random Yodel in your hand. Now it says manifest. I know the text here says summon, but I think it's actually manifest in your hand. Because the card itself says manifest here. So I think Riot just messed up here. So let's restart again. This is only manifesting a Yodel in your hand. So it's better because it lets you pick out of 3 Yodels, right? Compared to just getting a random Yodel, how it was before, where you just created a random one. So it is a buff in that regards, because if this is summon, by the way, this card is busted. So this is why I really much doubt it. I think it has to be manifest. But then it get another buff on top of it. Grant other allied Yodels, and this one now is grant all Yodels. So now when this Paparo attacks, it grants Yodel allies +1/+1. Grant other allied Yodels +1/+0. +1/+0, not +1/+1. So does this mean that this grants the allied Yodels everywhere? So instead of being grant other ally, now it's grant all Yodels. So is it everywhere as well? I think there's a couple of confusions here with this card. Okay, regardless, it's a good buff, right? Now you get to choose which one of them to pick instead of being random. And if this actually buffs every Yodel by +1, then that's also pretty huge, right? Even if it's only happening once, because Paparo only has 2 health, so after he gets 1 attack, he's probably gonna die. But, or is this just... Oh, no, you know what? I know what this is. This is not everywhere. This is just granting all Yodels +1, including himself. So instead of being like all allied Yodels, it was buffing everything except for himself. Now it buffs everything and himself. So all this means is like Paparo is going to go to 3 attack when he attacks, versus just staying at 2. So, okay, so I got it. So I'm pretty sure it's manifested Yoro, and then you grant all Yoro allies that are on the field +1/+0. Overall, I think it's a good buff. The stats stay the same, so it's a good buff. It could see some room in some like Yoro spam decks. So it should be interesting to see what creative people come up with. Because then there's other two buffs that Yoro's got as well. One is from the Soul Squad that got a complete redesign. Now it becomes a 3 cost instead of being a 4 cost. Now it's a 3 cost 2/2. But when it's summoned, it gets +1/+1. It grants, so it's permanent for each Yoro ally on the field. So if you're able to spam enough Yoros early on, and you can summon this down with like a 3 Yoros in the board, then this comes out as a 3 mana 5/5, which is not bad, could be decent. Similarly, the newbie gets +2/+0 every time that you summon a Yoro, and this one is going to be per round. Now, the question here is for me, it looks like there's no limit to this, right? So it doesn't say once per round. So technically this newbie could just continue growing, right? So maybe there's also some funny strategies here where you can give this Yoro like elusive or something like that and just make it like an actual big threat that the opponent has to worry about. Regardless, it's something that the opponent's going to have to block. But he only has 2 health, so it's not a bad block to do. Overall, the Yoro buffs are interesting. I just have no idea right now what decks they could play it. Let's move on to Frostbite, right? It's Riot's tradition to buff Frostbite almost every patch. And this time, I think the buffs are pretty significant. First of all, Shatter goes from 2 costs to 1 cost. Remember, this card deals 4 to an enemy if he has 0 power. Otherwise, he Frostbites it. This makes Shatter pretty much like Failure's Flock. Obviously, Flock is fast speed, which, yeah, sure. But you don't mind that Shatter is slow, because if you're freezing the unit, right, the unit is not doing any damage anyway. So you freeze the unit first, and then you do your Shatter, and it's pretty much like Flock, right? So it's a Flock with a different condition, and obviously with a different speed. I think this card is really good for a lot of failure decks. I think anytime that you have a 1 mana removal like this, becomes really powerful. We've seen that with Haste Spike, right? When Haste Spike got buffed from 2 mana to 1 mana, it kind of took over the game in a lot of Shadow Isle decks. I expect this to kind of be like that as well. I think this is a change that a lot of people might be sleeping on, and it's one that I will play in almost every Ashe deck that I play now from now on. Similarly, we have the Wolf, which is also got a significant buff. Now instead of being 3 attack and 2 health, it's 2 attack and 3 health. The health matters more because now it doesn't die to a Mystic Shot. The attack doesn't really matter because as soon as you challenge something that's frozen or has 0 power, you just kill it. You just literally kill it. So it doesn't matter if this thing has 3. Now it does matter because now you can't block Fearsome, for example. But I think at the most part you're kind of using this as an aggressive tool, not as a blocking tool. So this buff is also huge, and I think it's going to make its way into a lot of different Ashe decks. Overall, these are 2 very significant Frostbite buffs that I see actually making a difference. And then we get a buff to kind of like a ramp strategy. So this one is to throw Scavenger. Instead of being a 1/3, now it's a 0/4. But remember, if you behold an A+ card, this grants +3 attacks. So this becomes a 2 mana 3/4. 2 mana 3/4. That's huge. That's huge. This is right away one of the best blockers in the whole game for 2 mana. Because he has the 4 health to survive, and he has a 3 attack to almost kill anything else out there. It means that this makes his way to almost every single ramp deck because he lets you stall, which is exactly what ramp wants, right? Ramp wants to be able to stall long enough for them to actually get to their winning cards, and this lets us do exactly that. So I see no reason not to run Throw Scavenger as long as you're running enough 8 drops in your deck. Such a good buff. Then we have Hex Obliterator and Celestial Impacts. They kind of group these 2 together for some reason, but it's very 2 small buffs. So Hex Obliterator goes from 5 damage to 6 damage, and Celestial Impact now also heals your Nexus 3. I don't think this change matters that much for Celestial Impact. I think this card is still a little bit too expensive. However, for Hex Obliterator, the 6 damage could actually matter in such a situations. Could make a big difference. Now it hits some units that it wouldn't have hit before, like Swain, for example. So I like it. I like it. It could be a good alternative in some of those decks, right? That have a lot of like high health units. Also kind of kills Taliyah, for example, etc. I think it's a good change. I just don't know if Jace and or Lot's decks, etc., are good enough to actually run this card. You know, like I think this is a card that's really good if you can randomly generate it from like Varus Financier, but not good enough to main deck, if you get what I mean. So amazing hit from Financier, but otherwise I don't see the purpose of it. Then we get an amazing buff here to the Nasus Ahri package. And I mean, nerf. Why did I say nerf? I keep saying nerf. Amazing buff. Did I say nerf? I don't care. I'm too lazy to go back and re-edit this, so you guys are going to see exactly how it is. So, Conservatory and Lord Broadmane both get buffs. So, obviously, recently, Conservatory got nerfed from 10 to 12, and now they're kind of bringing it down to the middle and doing 11. That one extra turn still matters, but, you know, it's a lot more. You're able to swallow this a little bit better at 11 compared to 12. I think this card could make for some interesting decks again, whether it's Twisted Fate Katarina again, for example, or some Annie Elise kind of Shadow Owl decks, especially if you start incorporating the Lord Broadmane here. So now Lord Broadmane goes from a 2-4 to a 3-5. So it just straight up gets two stat points that make this card a lot better, let it survive longer, lets it block other units, lets it block fearsome enemies. This is a pretty darn good buff. And I think this card is a lot better than people give it credit for. It's just going to be a little bit slow to set it up. But for example, with Gohar, and I'm thinking of like a Nasus Shadow Owl control package, this card can be really, really nuts because 2 Gohars, for example, can just kill almost any opponent unit, which is really, really, really good. So I like this card a lot as a way to kind of present a lot of removal targeting to the opponent, and I could see this card making its way into a lot of control-ish type of decks. Sei'nen gets a little bit back up in health, so now it goes from 3-3 to 3-5. I think that's good. Sei'nen nerf was undeserved a patch ago, so I'm glad to see it back into a little bit more of a healthy state. And might make its way back in someone like Ahri decks. This buff should be a little bit insignificant unless the Ahri package get a little bit more buffs. Lauren Dulis gets a very interesting redesign. So now it's a 2-cost 2-2. And when you play him, you can grant an ally in your hand challenger. This is a very interesting change. I just cannot think what decks could use this. Right? I mean, you can probably pair, like, it's kind of funny because I feel like the best cards you want to give challenger to are cards not in Demacia. So, Duelist is probably better off depending on what your second region is. For example, you can give challenger to like a Kindred, right? Which becomes really powerful. Really, obviously the best is to give challenger to something that has quick attack. So stuff like Kindred, heck, even Jace, if you want to play this in like Jace Lutz. If your unit already has quick attack, it makes the challenger a lot better because now necessarily your unit can just kill stuff like that. I'm just having a hard time seeing if this actually is going to be that effective, right? Because, yeah, the challenger is nice, but, you know, the challenger it's a good keyword, but you're only taking advantage of the challenger every other turn when you're able to attack. And this card only has a 2-2 stat line, making it not an amazing blocker. It's a good blocker, but not like amazing. Maybe I'm wrong though. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm underestimating this. We'll see. But it should be good. It should be a good change. I think it's a good redesign, and it makes it a little bit more interesting. I just have a hard time evaluating how good it would actually be. Then we have Ibaaros. Yes, I love this card. I actually used it to win a game in the Aegis Esports League last Friday. It's amazing you can get lethal with this card. So now it becomes a 1-1. And the reason for that is because as a 0-0 card, it means that if you hush the Ibaaros, it will just automatically die. So at least it's a 1-1. If you hush the Ibaaros, it doesn't just straight up die. So this is actually amazing. Although I don't think hush is that prevalent anymore, but it is nice. It's a nice way to kind of make sure that you're not like losing to some random silence like that. So it's a good decent change. I think this card is super underrated in some decks. It is a little bit expensive, obviously, but I think that the meta might shift a little bit more to like late game strategies. So I could see this card actually be pretty decent. Then we have Safety Inspector, which goes from a 6-cost 6-6 to a 5-cost 5-5. It's a good buff. It means it comes down earlier. And if it comes down earlier, it's a lot better because now it means that you can start using the inspection pass a lot quicker. So I think this card might make its way to some sort of like Taliyah 6 type of burn strategies. Or so maybe it's not, maybe it doesn't have to be necessarily 6 Taliyah. I think it definitely has to be 6 to just so that you can start burning the opponent's deck, opponent's nets as fast as possible. You will need a lot of landmarks though, because remember, this card requires a landmark, so it needs to destroy a landmark for the inspection pass to deal 3 to anything. So just keep that in mind. I think it's really, really good though. I think it is very decent, and I could see it seeing a lot of play. It's kind of like a Battle of Arcane, if you want to put it that way. So Skip Abomination goes from a 4-2 to a 3-3. Is this a buff or is this a nerf? Right? A lot of the decks that wanted to play Skip Abomination want to do a lot of damage early on and then set up for like an atrocity. So the one less damage does hurt. However, the 1 extra health means that it's very likely for the Skip Abomination to attack twice. So it still ends up pushing 4 or more damage in my opinion. So I would say overall this is a very big buff, because now it's also a good blocker into a lot of things, and it just doesn't die to a lot of things that have 2 power like Oncologist or Ferrous Financier, etc. There's a lot of cards out there that are running almost every deck that have 2 power. Not a lot of them that have 3 power. So this is really good. Should force at least two. Either the opponent's taking just the damage, or they have to force 2 trades to stop the Skip Abomination from hitting their nets. So really, really good change, and I'm excited to see how this does in like some type of slate decks. Then we have Bone Club, and it's just gonna go from 4-4 to a 5-5. I don't know. Could make its way in some interesting overall strategies, right? We kind of seen how good the Shurima Armory is, right? But that one is a 3 mana 4-4. For 2 extra mana, is the 5-5 worth it? It's hard to tell. It's very, very hard to tell. It is making a units really, really big though. It's just tough because of how much mana it costs. Again, I could see it being used in some overall strategies though. I just have a hard time seeing this being used in more than just that deck. So, you know, decent buff. I don't know if it's going to make a lot of difference. Shadow Fanatic is another buff that is good because now this becomes a better blocker. We just talked about it with Skip Abomination. Now instead of being a 3-2, it's a 3-3, which makes it a better blocker. And it also doesn't lose to stuff like Mystic Shot, etc. So it will allow it to attack and also block compared to just being an attack engine. Now the thing with the Fanatic though is that once you equip an ally and you summon the Shadow Fin into your hand, you know, it kind of really done its job, right? So how much ship damage are you actually pushing through with this? Who knows? But again, the idea is that you're able to block and be able to stall to actually get your Cane online and your strategy online. I really like this change as well, and should make this card a little bit better. I just wish the Cane package was a little bit better. Then the Wrathful Rider goes from a 7-3 to an 8-3, and I can tell you right now that this change is useless. This card with just Challenger is not good enough, and I don't think there was anything that had like 8 health that's worth killing compared to things that have 7 health. So it's an interesting change, but no, this doesn't do anything. This card is still gonna be useless until it gets redesigned. So sorry, Rider. Goreliv goes from a 0-10 to a 0-12. Now remember, when this card gets summoned, it swaps its health with the Nasus health. So what this means is that now that it's at 12, it's kind of healing you more, right? If you have anything less than 10 health, it's healing you more than when it would have done otherwise when it was 10 health. So it's nice. It also means that if for some reason you get to turn 9 and you still have 20 HP, it doesn't feel as bad to play Goreliv because now you go up to 12 instead of going down to 10. So regardless, either way, it's healing you more or it's doing less damage to you when you summon it. It's really, really good. I think the best way to play Goreliv is still to try to cheat him out with like a ramp strategy with like War Models, for example. So I think that's the way that you want to go if you want to play Goreliv. Should making a better attacker though, and put a lot more pressure into the opponent. Really, really, really like it. Then we go to the Dust Rider. It goes from a 5 cost to a 4 cost, and he keeps the same attack. He just loses 1 health. Ooh, is this enough to make this card actually useful in that one? I don't think your main deck is steel, but now it makes it a lot better. if you get it from like Unspeakable Horror or any other natural generator. You know what I'm saying? Um, I like it a lot. I like it a lot. I like this change a lot because I think this card was already borderline playable as a manifested created card. Like I said, not as a main deck card, but as a manifested card, a created card. Sorry, it felt really good to play a lot of times. Now that it costs less, it feels even better to play. So I think this is a good change. Again, don't think it's enough to make it main deckable, but it's good enough to still, pass the eye test. Reaver's Row gets a really good change. It goes from 5 costs to 4 costs, and this is nuts. I don't know if you've seen Arcado's videos on Taliyah Reaver's Row, but I think that deck actually has some legs, and it reminds me of a time that I was trying to make Reaver's Row work months ago. Obviously, Arcado kind of took it in a completely different strategy, and I really, really like it. And now that it costs 4 mana, it has the perfect curve into playing this on 4 and playing Taliyah on 5. This is nuts. I think this card is actually super, super good, right? So, wow, you can easily just spam a whole field of 1-cost units that also have like fearsome and 2/2/1. Ooh, I really like that. I think there's gonna be some crazy good strategies with this deck. Again, if you haven't seen Arcado's Taliyah deck, I recommend seeing that, but I'm sure you're gonna see that a few times throughout this next patch. Then we go to Spirits. Actually, how many more do I have? I have been going for a while. Okay, I don't have that many more. It's been 41 minutes. I know some of you want to see those deck recommendations, so I'm probably gonna get a little bit faster. Spirit Unleash goes from now it grants the +1/+1 to allies everywhere. So now it doesn't feel as bad to use if you get this. And I don't think I'll ever main deck this, by the way. But as an Udyr spell, if you have nothing else to do, might as well just use it. Now all your cards everywhere are gonna be 1 more attack higher and 1 health higher. That's pretty good. That is pretty good. And you still didn't want to everything else as well in the opponent's nets. So I like it. I like it a lot. It's a decent change. I still don't think it's main deckable, but it makes it a better Udyr spell. The Colossus, now the copy that it creates costs 4, which means that now you can play the second Colossus for 4 costs instead of playing it for 8. Now, my question is, does the created Colossus also can create another one, right? So you can kind of keep going creating Colossus for the rest of the game that now costs 4. I think it's a really good change. It kind of allows you, gives you like a pretty good finisher that you can actually use to try to finish the game if you're able to actually summon multiple Colossus. Still don't think this card is good enough though, because it is coming down a little bit too late and does require you to play 8 mana for the Colossus and then play another, let's say 2 mana for an equipment. So you're spending 10 mana just to get another Colossus that's going to cost 4 that you can't play until the next turn. Might be a little bit too slow. So that's why I don't know about it. But it's a very interesting thought experiment to see if we can make that work. Darkin Ballista now just doesn't do 1 damage to yourself. I think this change is good. That way you're not burning yourself. I just don't know how often you're gonna use the Ballista, because I think almost every other region has a better equipment. So whatever second region you're playing with Nasus probably has a better equipment than the Ballista. But in certain situations, as you saw in like my Varus Ribbon deck, the Ballista makes sense if you're actually wanting for that equipment early on and not just get stuck with cards that require equipment to get triggered. Pathless Ancient now costs 2 less for each unit recalled this round. So if for some reason you recall 2 units, then that means the Ancient is going to cost 0. So it's going to come as a 0 mana for 3. Is that good? I don't know. I don't think it's good. I think like a vanilla unit like this, a 4/3, is decent, but it's not doing like enough to actually win us the game. I think I'd rather draw almost anything else in my deck than the Ancient. But it could be decent in certain strategies where you're just trying to like spam the board. I don't know. I don't know if this makes the cut in like Ahri decks. I don't know if it does. As much of a stats as he has, again, I think it's just not doing a lot. There's not a lot of benefit for the Ancient. For the Pathless Ancient. So we'll see. The Void Seeker is a 1 mana spell that probably nobody ever seen. You know what's kind of funny? How like almost there's so many cards from the Kai'Sa package that almost see no play, right? There's like 3 core cards that see play. Kai'Sa herself, actually I guess 4, right? Pretty much all 4 units. The 1 cost, the 2 cost, the 4 cost, and Kai'Sa see play. But you no longer see the Abomination, and you no longer see any of the other like 6, 7 drops, etc. that Kai'Sa has, and you never really saw the Void Seeker. So if you didn't know what this card did, it used to deal 1 to a follower, and if you have Evolve, it used to deal 3 instead. Now, when it does evolve, that 3 can hit champions. 1 mana, deal 3 to a champion. Sounds cool in theory, but this card is going to be dead in your hand for the most part until you're actually able to evolve. So I think it's a little bit too slow in what the evolve package wants to do. So I don't see this card seeing any play either. Then the Tailstones get changed from Keeper's Benedict to Electro Harpoon. And I saw some people on Twitter, I think I saw Monte Cristo making a tweet about this, that this actually ends up being a nerf. And I think I agree with him. I think, ironically, Keeper's Benedict was probably one of the interesting choices that this card had. And I think, because he actually gave you like some sort of removal, right? You're still never main decking the Bandle Tailstones, but he made it so that in certain situations, like with Concologist, it makes sense to pick the Bandle Tailstones if you were going to go Bandle Tailstone into the Keeper's Buried. With Electro Harpoon, I still don't think that's good enough to actually make this card main deckable, and it still seems way too expensive because remember, Electro Harpoon requires you to discard something, so not only you're paying an extra mana for Electro Harpoon, but you also have to discard one of your cards. No, that's not good enough. So, yeah, I think it is actually a nerf instead of a buff. But that does it for all the patch notes. Let's quickly go through some of the other changes that they made, other additions. We have new Ahri skin, Spirit Blossom Ahri. Looks pretty cool, actually. Oh, wow, that's kind of cute. That's so dope. Wait, she's like transformed. That's so dope. Cool skin. Still, don't buy skins. Skins are rip-off in this game. If you want to support Riot, that's awesome. Buy the Battle Pass, buy the pets, buy cardbacks. But I think the skins are way too expensive for what they get. Anyways, then you also have Evelynn. So Evelynn, and then, oh my god, is this level 2 art going to be something that I'm going to have to put in? Okay, no, okay. It's better than the level 2 Evelynn regular art in terms of not safe for work content. So that's good. This is cool. This is good. That's a good Evelynn art. Then we get Kindred. Oh, wait, that Kindred. I remember this Kindred. This skin is in League 2, right? I think this Kindred is so good. Oh my god, this is so cute. Look at it. Look, it's smiling. Oh, that's cute. We have Master G. Oh, Master G. Meh. Could be better. Could be better. Wait, is that Master G? No, it's not the same. Okay. Then we have Teemo. All right. And then we have Yasuo. Ooh, okay. That's pretty cool. All right. I like it. I like them. Again, I wouldn't buy them myself. But I like them. I see what they're doing. And then we have some updated skins. If you haven't seen, the Pike got a new level up animation, and so did the Sandstorm Echo. So if you already have those 2 skins, then they actually have a level up animation. And when the skins have level up animation, are probably one of the few times that I actually think they're worth it. Anything else? No. By the way, Worlds is happening not this weekend, but next weekend on the 18th. And I'm actually, on the 19th, and I'm actually qualified for the World's Qualifier, so you can join us and share us up for that. Then we have some bugs. None of these bugs actually matter for gameplay. Let me see. No. Managers were not dating, blah, blah. Okay, so no. Fits in an issue where Senna RFA was incorrectly accelerated and cost reduced in several choices. So this is a fix to, you were able to actually reduce the cost of like a lot of the stance swap choices just because the Ram stance was able to do damage. So now you're no longer able to do that. Rake of Ed was up into 1 version of Skill Napper J. Okay, so this is cool. This actually matter. Darking Boosters, which recited double strike, cool, whatever. Okay, cool. All right. So that's the patch notes. A lot of stuff. I think it's a really good patch. I think the fact that Seraphine got nerfed is a big deal and should make the meta game a lot better again as we lead up to Worlds. So I spoke a lot. Ended up being a little bit longer. I said 30 to 40. This ended up being 49 minutes long. So let's jump right ahead to the deck recommendations. I'm sorry for making you all wait so long. Let's start with Jinx. So beginning with some of the champion buffs that we saw, I spoke about how Jinx ended up getting a pretty significant buff. And one of the decks that I wanted to try out with Jinx first is not just Jinx Draven, but there's going to be Jinx Bandle City Discard Aggro. So the idea with this deck is that instead of using the Draven package, the Nasus package, you're more reliant on the Spirit Portal. So Spirit Portal, if you guys haven't seen this card, it's a 4 mana Bandle City card that you play, you discard a card, and then you grant all allies +1/+1. So not only are you giving them attack, which Vision, obviously Vision only gives attack, you're actually giving health as well, which can be very important at keeping some of your key units alive. And the discard happens before the buff, so you can actually synergize this with like Chompers, right? So that the Chompers comes down as a 1/3. So the idea here is that we're kind of playing for the Spirit Portal win condition instead of the Vision win condition. And obviously we're just playing a bunch of the Bandle City and PNC package. So Lulu and Jinx are our champions of choice. Lulu to be able to buff the Chompers, just synergizes with it that way, and Jinx to do Jinx things and just burn. Sunny Urchin to synergize with our discard fodder. Bandle Commando. The idea with the Bandle Commando is actually to give us more card that we can discard. The Hungry Outcat is nice in such a situation, but for the most part, you actually want to discard the Hungry Outcat because we are kind of lacking a little bit on discard fodder. That's why we also play Triple Boom, because the Boom gives us the discard fodder that we need. Fixing Upper is just to put some more aggression. The first time you discard a card, this card becomes a 3/3, so it could be really good and could also become a pretty good blocker because it can easily go to a 4/4 with Spirit Portal. Flame Chompers, discard fodder. 3 Augmented Experimental for us to actually try to level up the Jinx and actually be able to draw some cards. Triple Portal Cannon, synergistic with Lulu, and also our discards. Yuri-Reek, just discard fodder because we desperately need it with this deck. Triple Electro Harpoon, this is some of the burn that this deck and this package with Bandle City can give us, dealing 2 to the enemy Nexus. Then we have Triple Get Excited, obviously more burn. 1 Yodel Portal just to manifest a burst speed attacker. And then the Spirit Portal, which is what we talked about, to actually buff our wide board. So with this deck, the idea is obviously that you kind of go for a wide board by discarding your stuff like the Yuri-Reeks, you kind of go with the Portals, etc. And then you buff everything up with Spirit Portal and just push damage that way. And then you repeat it again next turn because now your units have an additional attack and an additional health. I think giving +1/+1 is what makes Spirit Portal worth it compared to just playing Vision. So if you want to try a different version of a Jinx deck, this is one such version. But of course, I also have to show you the basic version you're probably going to see everybody playing. And that's going to be Draven, Jinx, Nasus. So this is going to be your typical discard aggro package, which is tying the Nasus and PNC package together instead of going for something weird like I did with the Bandle City. So the idea with this deck is also just putting a lot of aggression, just kind of slamming all your units down on the field as soon as possible, and you're able to actually buff them up using the Arena Battlecaster, so that the wider that you go with a Battlecaster in the board, the more unit that you're dealing. Between the Battlecaster and the Vision, you can put a lot of damage through with your wide board, and then the wide board also gets rewarded by being able to play Cloud Favorite on top of it. So if you have 4 or 5 units in the field, then you can play a card favorite, and now you have a really big overwhelm unit that the opponent has to deal with. So Draven obviously there because it gives us the access, which synergizes with a lot of our discard fodder. Jinx, just doing Jinx things. Again, the level up of the Jinx is a really, really big deal. We play triple rearguard for some aggressive approach. The Grenadier is just there for discard fodder and also to kind of create some crazy aggression if the opponent is not prepared for it. Sunny Urchin, just some draw engine, and as well to kind of discard our cards. The Caster, like I said, is there to buff up our whole board. Chompers, discard fodder. House Spider, just go wide to allow for the Craft Favorite there in a battle caster and the Vision to become more efficient. Craft Favorite for some alternate win condition, go super big with the Overwhelm. Double Experimental for some weak times where you kind of run out of resources. Portal Cannon, easy, just get a bunch of portals in the field and buff them up with Vision or the casters. Yuri-Reek, some discard fodder. Rummage, some more draw in case that you kind of feel yourself running short. We're going to play triple Get Excited as well for the burn, and then the triple Vision, which you can easily discard with stuff like the Spinning Axes or the Portal Cannon to kind of push a lot of damage. This deck wants to pack a punch and beat the opponent as soon as possible. As you see, we don't have a ton of burn. But anyways, that is really the 2 Jinx decks that I recommend. You can try either one of them and kind of see which one you like better. So let's move ahead to other cards that got buffed. And this one is the one that I was talking about so much in a patch notes breakdown. This is going to be your Reverse Row Taliyah deck. Yes, Reverse Row. So the idea with Reverse Row, and Runeterra still shows it as 5 cost, but remember this got buffed to now be 4 cost, is that you want to spam the Reaver Road and just have a bunch of 1-drop on the field that are all going to get granted +2/+1 and fearsome. So if you're able to copy the Reverse Row with Taliyah, right? So the game plan with this deck is that you play Reverse Row and you duplicate it with Taliyah, then when this thing comes down to 0, you're gonna have your 1-drops have +4 attack, +2 health, and have fearsome. And a lot of decks are not going to be able to deal with that pressure, especially because you can kind of supplement that with other 1-drops, including the Abomination that counts as a 1-drop, including the Restore Devout that also counts as a 1-drop. And you can actually cheat out the Reaver Swole even quicker by playing stuff like Magic Possibilities and Time in a Bottle. So this is kind of like a combo deck that just allows you to like summon a bunch of 1-drops, right? Summon a bunch of 1-drops and just create like a super big attack against the opponent that they're not prepared for because of the fearsome, and because a lot of our discount, because a lot of our countdown cards are focus speed, you're actually able to create like a pretty big open attack that the opponent cannot react to. This combo deck is really, really fun. Again, the main combo you want is Reaver Swole into duplicating Taliyah, but even if you don't get that combo, you're still able to kind of cheat out a lot of units because of the discount, the kind of cards that you have. We do play a lot of other landmarks like Ancient Prep and Perseverance to try to actually draw into our combo or predict into it. That's why we also play it for Second Bakai and the Pool Shark, but they're also 1-drops, right? So they're also 1-drops, which means that they also get buff and can get that fearsome buff from the Reaver Swole. We even playing Taskmaster in my version of this list to get even more greedy and make your 1-drops even more powerful by giving an extra attack. Again, the debuff is there not only as additional landmark for Taliyah, but also because the Restore debuff that gets someone through the sarcophagus is actually a 1-drop unit. Magic Possibilities and Time in a Bottle are there to count down our Reaver Swole. Rite of Passage is actually to cheat out the Reaver Swole again, because remember, Rite of Passage manifests an ally landmark that has destroyed this game. So you can actually bring back the Reaver Swole after you have already used the 1, allowing this deck to potentially be able to still stay in the game, late game into the game. 2 Random Negation to stop stuff like Abomination, or Well, or random kind of disruption cards like that. Triple Ouroboros gives us draw and also counts as a 1-drop. And then we also play Sands of Times, which lets us actually remove the opponent's fearsome blockers while also counting down the Reaver Swole to actually summon our units with fearsome on them. So this card is like a double whammy for this deck. This combo deck is actually super fun, and props to Aggro and whoever else came up with this idea, because I think this deck is going to be a blast. So yeah, this is one deck that I also recommend trying out, especially with the buff now. Then we go to 6 Taliyah. So this is going to be kind of like another version of Taliyah deck, but then this one is more the traditional 6 Taliyah. The card that we're using here that just got buffed is Safety Inspector. So Safety Inspector now costs 1 less, so it's going to be 5, and it creates the Inspection Pass in hand, which you can actually use to destroy your own landmarks to actually deal damage to the opponent Nexus or to one of the units. So it's kind of like cheaper Rite of Negation. Obviously it only deals 3, and you can actually heal the net, that you can hit the Nexus compared to Rite of Arcane. So that's the benefit of this, because you can actually switch to like a burn strategy where you start burning the opponent Nexus with the Inspection together with Taliyah and Ziggs to put in more damage on them. So just like any traditional 6 Taliyah deck, we are playing 666, triple Taliyah. Obviously, either one of these units leveled up is huge. We play all the landmarks that we can, triple Ancient Prep, double Minefield, triple Perseverance. We don't want to play triple Minefield because it can be a little bit too greedy. But everything else here can be really good. Let's draw and predict. Chemist gives us 1 landmark. Hopper gives us a landmark. Debug gives us landmark. The Desert Naturalist can synergize with any of these landmarks, destroy it, and especially with the sarcophagus allows to summon multiple units, right? The Rock Bear and the Restore Devout. 1 Herald of the Magus to be able to give our 6 Taliyah Overwhelm after a while. It should be really easy to trigger this because of all the landmark cards that we have. The Safety Inspector, we kind of already talked about it. Triple Drop the Bomb. And the reason that I'm main decking the Drop the Bomb is to actually make sure that we are leveling up the 6 in the Taliyah. So, because this deck sometimes struggles if you don't get the right hand to actually level them up. So this gives me even more options. And it's also a card that we can use not only to remove an opponent's unit, but then set up and have a landmark for the Inspection Pass to actually destroy. 1 Absorber, just kind of similar role to the Magus. 1 Quicksand to protect ourselves. Triple Rite of Arcane to remove the opponent's units. Triple Unravel Earth to just give us draw and landmarks. And then 1 Rite of Negation to kind of push our combo through. So 6 Taliyah might actually make a comeback in this meta. It seems pretty decent. I just don't know exactly how good Inspector will be. So let's move on ahead to the next one. And this one is going to be a spicy one. And I think this deck is going to be bad, but I really wanted to come up with an idea for Paparo, and this is what I came up with. So forgive me for any LP that you might lose tomorrow. So this is going to be Norra Poppy. And this is going to be mostly as Nisi Biggledust deck. That's also relying on the fact that we're able to summon a lot of Yodels, right? So we know Norra. Norra's simple. She's going to create the portals in your deck and allow you to kind of special summon. I say special summon. To summon those created cards. Poppy is there to kind of buff our units even more. The Young Construct is kind of there to supplement the Norra, creating more mysterious portals to be able to summon more created units. Stone Stacker is just there because it's a Yodel and it's a really good unit at that, right? A 2/3 with impact. And the reason that I want to have more Yodels in my deck is because we are playing the 3 cards that got buffed, right? So we're playing Paparo, and Paparo grants all Yodels +1/+0 when he attacks, which means that your Stone Stacker all of a sudden now become a 3/3, right? And the Paparo also creates a card in your hand, which synergizes with both Norra and the Biggledust because it's a created card. Then we are playing the Yodel Newbie, which is now a 1-mana card, and every time you summon a Yodel with this card, this guy's going to get an additional 2 power to the hand. So again, that's why we also play the Stone Stacker, that way we can actually curve out into the Newbie, into the Stone Stacker if we need to, or into the Norra, because Norra is also a Yodel. The Grenadier is there because he actually is an Allegiance card that summons another Yodel follower. So if we have a Newbie on the field, then all of a sudden the Newbie gets buffed up by 4. And again, I know the cards in Runeterra are not updated yet, so if you want reference to what the patch notes said, just go back to that. And then we also play the Swole Scout kind of for similar reason. The Swole Scout now costs 3, and it's going to get +1/+1 for every Yodel. So by having the multiple Yodels on the Grenadier and from Paparo and everything else, you're able to actually potentially get the Swole Scout to be pretty big. Lastly, we have the Yodel Captain, kind of playing similar role as Poppy, just kind of buffing up all those Yodels and all those other cards that we're going to be summoning from the portals. Now, on the spell side of things, Pokestick just for some draw. Triple Relentless Pursuit, because my idea with this deck is that we're going to just get big enough to just be able to rally, especially when we have the Biggledust on the field. The Biggledust is our main win condition. You buff your cards by +1/+1, and anyone that is created gets buffed by +2, and then you're able to rally right after it. So technically, the combo should be Biggledust into rally for the most part. Triple Portapalooza for more draw and more portals. Again, synergizes with everything in our deck. And then one Eclectic Collection, because I just needed a 40th card, right? So in case that you have a full board, you're able to summon this and make sure you have a lot of created cards in your deck for the rest. Again, not sure if this deck is actually going to be good, but it's kind of the idea that I came up with Paparo, Newbie, and the Swole Squad. So I'll try it out and let you know all how that goes. Let's go to the next one. And this one is one that you all might have seen in my channel before, and this is going to be a Ramp Demacia deck. Now, this one is going to be playing War Mothers, right? So the idea with this deck is that we're just ramping up to War Mother's Call and then taking the advantage that Demacia has a lot of really, really good units that we can hit with War Mother's Call. So we can hit the Lord Eldred, we can hit the Tiana, the Wrath of Failure, the Gorlith, and the Citria, or Galio, or Trundle. All of those are really good hits. Then we do have a little bit of hits that are a little bit bad, like the Troll Scavenger and the Princess of the Old One. But the idea is that we're playing the Troll Scavenger because it's such a good blocker that will allow us to actually stall to get to our game plan. Again, I talked about this on my Passionate Breakdown. I think this card now is nuts just because he has such good stat line as a 3/4, and we have enough A+ cards that is almost always going to be triggered. And even if you do summon it with War Mother's Call, it's still a pretty good unit, right? It's not like it's going to be like a horrible unit. So yeah. Again, idea with this deck, you usually want to just keep your ramp, Faces of the Old One, Catalyst of Eons, and Voices of the Old One, and just kind of ramp up to your win condition. In the meantime, you're trying to stall between the Troll Scavenger, the Blighted Ravine, the Flash Freezes, Harsh Winds, right? These are the cards that would allow you to potentially stall to actually get to your win condition and kind of win the game from there. We're playing 2 cards that got buffed, the Scavenger and the Gorlith Unscalable. So, you know, that's why this deck makes it out here. Now, Trundle is my second champion of choice, as well as Galio. Trundle because you can actually win a lot of games with the Ice Pillar and the Trundle as an alternate win condition, especially when he gets doubled up by Citria, Lady of the Clouds. That's why we also play Citria here. And then Galio, because Galio potentially give you the access to be able to rally. And when you summon him from the War Mother's Call, everything gets +3 health. So It's actually pretty good. This deck is really fun, and with less Ionia in the meta, it might actually be, you know, a little bit viable. Who knows? So yeah, just give it a shot, and then we'll go ahead to the next deck. So the next deck that we have in our list is gonna be Ashe Thresh. Now the reason that we're playing Ashe is because we got 2 buffs, 2 cards. We got Rimefang Wolf is now a 2/3, and we have Shatter, which now costs 1. So I was thinking, all right, we need to play a Ashe deck, right? Ashe with freeze. Now, Ashe LeBlanc is a little bit boring, and I don't think Ashe LeBlanc is gonna get as much advantage of like the Wolf and the Shatter compared to this archetype. And this archetype we haven't seen, it's kind of like spooky Ashe, kind of trying to revive Ashe, right? So the idea here is that you're able to bring back the Ashe with Harrowing. Unfortunately, Harrowing got nerfed to 10 mana, which kind of hurt this deck compared to 9. But the idea is that you don't care about Ashe dying, because you can just let Ashe die and then eventually just summon multiple Ashe with the Harrowing and be able to kind of win the game from there. Because the Ashes will all freeze the opponent's units and will, you know, stop them from actually being able to do anything. In the meantime, you're kind of getting a lot of value from just freezing stuff and potentially Thresh being able to cheat Ashe out. So the Thresh obviously is there to potentially be able to bring Ashe out of their deck and be able to have double Ashe in the field. Sentry for some draw, Archer for some freezes. The Wolf synergizes with every freeze that we have in the deck and now becomes a really big threat the opponent has to deal with. We go play the Babbling Jerk, which actually lets us draw Ashe, because Ashe is our only unit with 5+ power. So we have pretty much an Ashe tutor. We do play double Quietus and potentially should be 3 because Quietus means that you can kill anything. You can kill anything that's frozen for just 1 mana. So thinking about it, this should probably be 3 Quietus, to be honest. I don't know why I just went down to 2. Triple Glimpse, obviously for some extra draw. Shatter, a 1 mana flock pretty much for this archetype. Triple Troll Chant to save our Ashe against some removal, and also levels up Ashe in certain situation. Battle Feast for removal. Flash Freeze and Harsh Winds, pretty straightforward. Level up Ashe and send yes with the Wolf. Triple Vengeance to kill anything that we cannot freeze for some reason. 1 Ruination, because again, we always have Harrowing to bring the units back, so it's kind of like another get out of jail card if we get into a tight spot. And then Harrowing is a main win that we win the game. I think everything here looks pretty straightforward. Again, maybe you can go to 3 Quietus and just reduce, I don't know, maybe 1 Glimpse. Maybe you go to 2 Glimpse, because we do have a lot of draw anyways. But, you know, just give it a shot. I think this deck could actually be pretty useful as well, and should do really well against a lot of like the Demacia or kind of mid-range type of decks that are going to be out there. Really fun when I have played this archetype before. Then let's go ahead to another Thresh deck. And now this time we're going to play Thresh Nasus. And this is going to be because of the buff to escape Abomination. So I'm going to revisit how this Nasus Thresh deck used to be, where we kind of play like a more aggressive win condition. So Thresh and Nasus, obviously the Thresh role in this deck, similar to the other deck that we showcased, is that he's trying to cheat out our Nasus. And we have a lot of units that can kill it, that are killing each other, to actually allow the Thresh to potentially level up a lot quicker than he will level up in the Ashe deck. Nasus is our main win condition. If this thing gets to attack with 10+ power, it gets Spell Shield, and then you can just win the game from there because of Atrocity or anything else like that, and just continues growing. The Blood Letters are really good because it gives us the Dark Control, which is a target that we can actually slay and sacrifice to be able to use our cards like Glimpse or Caretaker or Spirit Leash, right? So it kind of gives us those free targets that we can sacrifice, while also giving us the equipment that's going to make our units stronger and could potentially later on summon Solani as an alternate win condition, because sometimes you just want to push a little bit more damage to kind of set up for an overwhelm. Now the Butcher, pretty straightforward, just there to synergize with the Curse Keeper and trigger Slays. The Bakai, just push a lot of damage early on. Again, I'm trying to play this deck a little bit more aggressive, so that's why we're playing Butcher, Bakai. We're playing both Bakais, Bakai Reaper and the Forsaken Bakai. Forsaken Bakai just to try to predict into the cards that we need. Curse Keeper here, obviously Abomination feels a lot better now as 3 health, so it should feel really good. Fading Icon gives us the Parade for us to slay. Blighted Caretaker is really good as well. I think obviously being able to summon 2 saplings can be really good and lets us pull blockers away, especially away from our Reaper. 2 Merciless Hunters can, for a similar reason, the Vulnerable could be really useful. 2 Spirit Leash for some extra draw. We talked about it. We have target of Curse Keeper or the Dark Control to actually sacrifice. And then we play the Glimpse as more slay triggers. Again, a lot of these cards are just slaying each other so that we can actually make this Nasus as big as possible. triple Battle Feast to remove the opponent's units, 2 Random Negation to protect our Nasus, 2 Vengeance for some removal, and then 1 Atrocity to finish up the game. Pretty straightforward, nice Nasus Thresh type of deck, which I think actually could be playable in this meta. So give it a shot as well if you like this archetype. Let's move on to a different champion, and this time we're going to try out Renekton Ornn. And the reason that I want to try this out is because obviously Bone Club got a buff, right? So Bone Club is now 9 mana +5/+5. So I kind of wanted to play stuff with equipment because we already have the Berry Armory, right? So the Berry Armory is already creating the Treasure of the Sands in our hand. That's already a 3 mana 4/4, and the Bone Club is kind of like an extension of the Treasure or the Berry Armory. So in case that you don't get the Berry Armory, you can play the Bone Club instead, right? So that way we have a better chance of hitting at least one of these 2 equipment. And either one of these equipment can get copied by Ornn and become even bigger and bigger, because now this Ornn is going to become huge if you get any of those equipment, especially as it starts forging. And obviously we have Renekton, which synergizes really good with the Berry Arm, with the Treasure of the Sands, and also with the Bone Club to just level up right away. The rest of the cards are kind of cards that help us synergize that way with that. The Forsaken Baka is there to try to predict into one of our equipment as we need it. The Ruthless Raider and the Tough Speakers are really there more because those are 2 really good cards to play with the Berry Armory. Like if you play Berry Armory on turn 1, play one of these cards on turn 2, and then you can play the Treasure of the Sands on one of them on turn 3. Now all of a sudden you have some Overwhelm units that have either a 3/5, either a 6/5 or a 6/4 with Tough, which is really good. Merciless Hunter, just fearsome, kind of similar, a little bit worse than Overwhelm, but the fearsome can be really nice at removing some key blockers, and also synergizes with the Renekton, setting up the gift for the Renekton. Rune Runner, kind of similar thing, right? The point with the Rune Runner is that you want to buff it up with the Bone Club or the Armory, and because he has Spell Shield and Overwhelm, it's going to be very less likely for the opponent to actually be able to deal with the Rune Runner. So most games you're finishing up because of Rune Runner being buffed by one of these 2 cards, to be honest. Then we have Exhaust to synergize with Renekton, 3 Sisters for some freezes in case that we get into trouble, Trollshan to save our units and also get some good trades, 2 Curse of the Tomb. I used to run 3, but now it's down to 2 because this card got nerfed, but it should still be really, really good for this archetype, especially because it can synergize with the Rune Runner or any of our other Overwhelm units to just push the damage that we need, 2 Random Negations to protect ourselves, and we're still running triple Battle Fury because why not? It just works so well with any of our Overwhelm. And you can actually even put it like on an Ornn and then summon like a big ram, right? So should be really interesting. Might be a little bit too slow, but give it a shot and see how slow it feels. So yeah. And then we go to another Ornn deck. And now this one is kind of taking advantage of the buff that Jax got. So now Jax loads up a lot quicker. So I wanted to try out Jax Ornn again. And we also haven't tried this out since Unforgiving Cold got released. So Jax got buffed, now levels up a lot quicker, allowing us to actually get the Light of Katarina to be leveled up and have Overwhelm. And if this Light of Katarina has Overwhelm on it, it might be correct in certain situations to just copy it with Ornn. That way the Ornn himself has Overwhelm as well as the ram that is going to summon. We are also playing 2 Ornns Forged because obviously we're playing a lot of equipment, so being able to forge is really nice. Triple Omen Hug, we wanted a 1-drop, and there's not a lot of 1-drops in Failure. 2 Artisans, again, we have the Time of Dedication in hand, allowing us to forge. Triple Hook Master, I know this card got nerfed, but it's probably still one of the best equipment masters out there, so I think it's still worth playing her. And because this deck actually plays Forge cards, like the Artisan and the Ornns Forge, then it's not as bad that she has less stats, because she can get really big all of a sudden. We just want to have as many chances as possible to get equipment to level up the Jax, or to potentially get like Scout, which works really good with Ornn. Then we have Castaway and Combat Care, kind of similar roles, just a lot more equipment, level up our champions. And then I'm actually also trying out the Rider Colossus here. So we have so many equipment here. If for some reason we don't get an Ornn, then the Colossus could serve as an alternate win condition, and just put any of the equipment that we have from these other cards here to kind of get that going. And then the rest of the decks are just kind of support spells. 2 Blades of the Fallen is kind of nice. Lets us, for a 1-mana spell, we get another unit, right? So it's like we don't lose our units. Double Cash to potentially save our cards, especially like save Jax against like a Mystic Shot. Then Transient Lord, really good. We always gonna have equipment on the field, so kind of like a free draw there while also letting us challenge. Triple Trojan to allow us to have some good trades. Triple Parchment Hole for even more draw and also summon another unit. And then the Triple Unforgiving Call is almost always going to be enabled and will allow us to take some really, really good trades and stop the opponent from just killing us. Because of Unforgiving Cold, I think this deck might be good enough to actually stall out the game long enough for Ornn or Jax to come down and just finish up the game that way. So, yeah. Oh man, I'm kind of running out of breath as well. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more decks to go. So yeah, let's move on and get ahead to the next one. So the next one today, it's going to be Ahri Ken. Now I'm kind of cheating here a little bit. The only buff that this deck got was Sei'nen going back to 5 health. I don't know if that buff is good enough to say that this is, you know, a new interesting deck, but I mean, this deck always looked really fun to me, so I wanted to kind of showcase it to you all again, because it's been a while since we showcased this. I think it's been months since I made like a YouTube video about Katarina Ahri. Now, Katarina Ahri is kind of playing like Cannon Ahri. I said that it's playing Katarina instead and not relying on the Cannon level up. And obviously the idea is that you can push a lot of damage by having the Katarina rally and then just attack with your elusives over and over again. So we play Ahri, which the synergy with playing Nasus with Ahri is that we can put the might on the Ahri, and Nasus is just pushing overwhelm damage through any blocker that you might see there. Katarina there for the rallies, and also the Blaze Edge can actually be really good as well. We actually playing 9 1-drops. Dancing Droplet, Mourn, and Disciple are all really good 1-drops in Ionia now, which all have recall synergies. So I think I'm down to play all of them and just push as much damage as possible, because again, if we have a leveled up Katarina, then all these units are going to push even more and more damage overall. The Blade Twirler can synergize with all of this 1-drops as well to become bigger and bigger, and can synergize with the Might itself. Conspirator lets us recall like the Droplet for us to actually get some more additional draw. Sending Thousand Tales is back to being a good blocker at 3-5, and he also just gives us a lot of draw. Triple recall and 1 Gruesome Theater to kind of let us recall and save our units, and this allows us to actually recall their units if we need to. 1 Nullify and 2d9 to protect ourselves against the opponent's removal. Triple Twin to protect our units or actually push some extra damage if we need to. Double Concussive Palm and the Homecoming are our 2 choice cards to disrupt the opponent's game plan. So still kind of playing the triple Homecoming because it just synergizes so well with this deck. Obviously, we no longer have the Tailstones available to us, but I think that's okay. I think this archetype can still do okay by just having the triple Homecoming and the Concussive Palm in its place. So yeah. Really fun. I played this again. I played this like 5-6 months ago and showcased it on YouTube, so you can always look up the video on Ahri Katarina. Not a lot has changed except for the Disciple being new. So yeah, try it out. And then let's go ahead to the next one, and that's gonna be Elise Annie Shadow. So this is what I was talking about during the patch breakdown, about a deck that actually can take advantage of Broadmane. So now this deck, I'm bringing it up to you all because of the buff to Conservatory and the buff to Broadmane. Conservatory is pretty straightforward, just goes down quicker, which enables all our little spells like Gohar and Balefeast and Unspeakable Horror to all of a sudden become big spells as they started in 2, or even more if we have multiple Conservatories. So all of a sudden, anything that's small becomes really, really big. So, and then the Broadmane is really good with this archetype specifically because remember, Broadmane, if you use a fast, slow, or skill on a unit that's already damaged or stunned, then it just kills it. Which means that if you already have a unit that you damage because of a Gohar, then you can use another Gohar to just straight up kill it. Or use a Balefeast. So all of a sudden, almost anything, any damage unit, as long as Broadmane is in the field, it's like they have Disintegrate on them. And you have so many pings to easily enable that, which is why I think it feels so good. The rest of the deck is kind of just built, obviously, to getting the Conservatory online. So Annie's there because, obviously, Taylor is amazing, and Annie just lets us progress Conservatory. Elise is just there for some aggressive, but also for the Spiderlings for some additional blockers, and just targets for the Glimpse. Catalog of Regret because of the Gohar synergy, so that we can actually get Pack Your Backs enabled. House Spiders for some early blockers. Sentry as well lets us stun, enabling our flock, or actually working with Broadmane as well. Broadmane, we kind of talked about it, just can let us kind of kill almost anything. Triple Gohar, double Quietus. I don't know how good Quietus is in this meta now that Seraphine is not around, or Ezreal, but you know, could still kill some stuff like Norra and Heimerdinger and stuff like that. Triple Flock, pretty straightforward. Disintegrate is a really good way to remove the opponent's units because of the Balefeast and everything like that. Double Glimpse. Double Unspeakable Horror, triple Balefeast, one Scorcher, and double Whisper Wars. You might notice that we're not playing Vengeance, and that's because I do feel very confident that the Broadmane can actually stick on the field, and then makes a lot of our spells just be pretty much like a pseudo Vengeance, to be honest. So, you know, maybe Vengeance is correct in this deck, but I don't know. I feel like I like the draw a lot better. If anything, maybe the Scorcher is a little bit greedy. I don't know. We'll have to see how often we see like a lot of landmark decks. If we're not seeing like throws and stuff make a comeback, then maybe Scorcher is no longer needed, and we can put like Vengeance, or we can have another Whisper Words in its place. I think this deck is really fun. I'm really interested to try out and see how Bloodmane actually works. So yeah, but the next 3 decks that I'm gonna showcase are more kind of like decks that I have showcased recently that I think are gonna be really, really good in this patch still, and some of them they receive some slight buffs. So let's first start with Elise Twisted Fate Gohar. Now, you might have seen me play this deck a little bit, and I actually brought this deck last week to the Aegis Esports tournament and actually won both of my sets. Now, this deck in total went 2-1 in games, but it led me to actually be able to win my 2 sets. And the idea with this deck is obviously it's Gohar, right? So the idea is that you're committing the Gohards, and you have so much draw with Bilgewater and Shadow Owls that you're actually able to get your pack your back. In the meantime, you have a lot of control tools to kind of stall and be able to remove anything that the opponent wants to do. So the reason that I'm showcasing this deck today is because we did get a slight buff to this deck, with Ibaaros actually getting a buff. And I actually really like the Darken Harpoon in this archetype because he actually lets us draw extra cards, which again could be that Gohar, and actually enable us to get to that pack your back win condition even quicker. So Elise, just from early aggression and early blockers, Twisted Fate has the potential to level up because of how much draw we have. Harpoon, we talked about it. Ibaaros is a really good alternate win condition because remember, Ibaaros cannot be blocked by anything that has less than 4 attack. So opponent needs to have a pretty significant unit to actually be able to block the Ibaaros, or they have to spend a big card to remove it. Sentinel's just there for like early blockers. Triple pull shot for the extra draw to actually enable Twisted Fate or gotta Gohar. Same thing with the Croaker for draw. Sap, same thing for draw. Now, we don't guarantee that we get Gohar because we are playing a lot of 2-cost spells or less, but I still think it's worth it to play the Sap because that extra draw can be really good, and that extra 2 damage is really nice. Together with Ibaaros, we do have the Commander Ledgers as an alternate win condition as well, which actually ends up being a little bit better than Ibaaros a lot of time because let's say that your opponent's at 20 HP, now you bring them down to 10, which means that all you need is to pack your backs to just finish them off, right? So it could be really interesting in that regards. Or if the opponent goes down to less than 5 because of your Ledgers, then you can just win the game again because of pack your backs. Triple Gohar, straightforward. 2 Quietus. I used to run 3. I went down to 2 because of no Seraphine and Ezreal. Triple Glance for extra draw. I like the heavy metal a lot, especially because I do expect Jax to be more prevalent. And this also just lets me destroy while also damaging the opponent's unit. Compared to Quietus, which only kills the equipment. This kind of does both, right? For 1 extra mana and destroy the equipment and also dealing 2 damage, which potentially sets up the opponent for like a Gohar or something else. Triple Battlefields just for some removal and some extra some blockers. And Akaboros, amazing in this archetype, just gets us a lot of draw and also gets us blocker. 1 Will so that we don't lose too hard to some aggro decks into some situations, and then Triple Vengeance just to move anything that we think is going to be scary. I think this deck is actually really, really good. It just struggles a little bit, and by a little bit I mean like a lot, against Demacia, but with the nerfs that Demacia got to like rally and stuff like that, maybe it's not that bad. The Harpy from Bane doesn't scare as much because again we play heavy metal, so the heavy metal destroys the Harpy's equipment and then also does 2 damage to it. So you know, it doesn't feel as bad as if they still have the equipment on her. Okay, so let's go ahead to the last 2, and the next one is gonna be Pantheon Varus. Again, another deck that already been around, which got a little bit of a buff because Varus became stronger, but also got a big nerf because Saga Seeker got weaker. I think the Saga Seeker nerf matters a lot more than the Varus buff, but I think this deck overall didn't come out too bad from the patch, and I expect this deck to actually rise in popularity, especially if the Demacia becomes really popular, because the Unforgiving Cold just shuts down a lot of the Demacia decks, and so does the big Pantheon and a big Saga Seeker, and the Furious Wielder just lets us kind of strike to kill some of their Banes or anything like that. So I expect this deck to be very, very popular and very, very powerful. If you haven't seen us play this deck, again, we posted a video on Pantheon Varus, but the idea is easy, right? The idea is that you're just playing all your units out, just trying to target yourself as much as possible to try to level both champions, and then eventually you get one or two champions and just win the game from there, or multiple of them. We are playing the unending wave to actually increase our odds of joining those champions, and we just have a lot of cards that rely on us have gotten equipment. So that is why we're playing triple lodestone, triple Varus, and triple Shatter, because we want to make sure that we enable stuff like Momentous Choice, Furious Will, their Protection, Wave, Cold, and Healer's Resurrection. All of these cards need equipment. Same thing with the cultists. So it's important that we have at least one equipment in our hand, and then kind of go from there to enable our champions to kind of win the game, while also having a lot of protection and a lot of other utility cards to actually keep them protected. So yeah. And the last one is a deck that actually only kind of received nerfs, right? Because the Bane Tumble got nerfed. But this deck, I think, is going to be the top deck of the meta. And if you haven't been seeing this deck around, it's Queen, Bane, Fiora. Now, some people are playing triple Queen and just three Bane and just ignoring the Fiora. That's fine too. I think having three Queen might be a little bit too greedy, so I just 2 Queen, 1 Fiora is the perfect combo for me. And the idea with this deck is that you're able to synergize this Demacia cards with the Darking Heart, which you're able to give quick attack to your challengers. So now your challengers have quick attack and challenger, which lets them trade well into almost everything. In addition to that, obviously you have the Darking Heart, the Darking Aegis, which becomes a really good thing to place as well on your challengers, giving them tough and an additional health. So any of this equipment are really nice. And then we also have the Castaway and the Combat Kill, giving us even more equipment that we can use for the Harpy and the Tumbles. Really, the MVP of this deck, in my opinion, is the Harpy. Because the idea with the Harpy is that the Harpy comes down with Scout, and if you have Bane in the field with the Tumbles, then you're able to kind of have pseudo rallies. So why do I care about the rallies getting nerfed when we can just tumble with the Harpy on the opponent's attack turn, and we get the Scout, and then we get a regular attack token as well. So that's kind of the idea. The Cursed Harpy just pushes so much pressure on the opponent, and that's why I still spec it. And you can actually do that as well with the Queen or the Blinding Assault. That's why Queen makes sense in this deck, but it's a little bit less effective than Harpy, because the Harpy obviously doesn't die to removal as soon as he has an equipment on it. The rest of the cards are just cheap units like Fleet Feather, Broadmane for challengers, Force Shift to actually give us extra mana, which actually is really good for our equipment. And then we have a lot of support spells, Catch, Sharp Sight to protect our units, Fish Fight, just kind of like a one-sided single combat, Blinding Assault, additional synergy with the Darking Heart, Double Cataclysm for in the cases that we don't have Bane on the field and we don't have Tumbles, and then 1 Condemn as excellent alternate strike. This deck I think is busted. This is another deck that I bought to the Aegis Esports League last week that ended up performing really well for me as well. I think the one game that I lost with it was because a misplay on my part. So I expect to see this deck a lot as well. But I think that is it. Yep, that is it for all the decks that I have recommended today. As always, I wish you all luck in the patch tomorrow. I think it's really interesting. I think the metagame is going to be back to a little bit more stabilized and less random shenanigans now that Seraphine got nerfed, which is very, very good. Hopefully that's true though. Hopefully we have fun. With Worlds coming up in about less than 10 days, then I guess more than 10 days, right? Today's only the 8th. Yeah, so Worlds comes up in about 11 days. So I'm hoping that the meta is kind of good for Worlds to kind of give you all a good show in the regional qualifiers. But enough about that. Hope you enjoyed today's deck recommendations, and if you did, make sure to like the video below and subscribe to us. We post LOR videos every single day. You can also find us on Twitch at Twitch.tv, where we stream 2 times a week. We're probably going to be streaming tomorrow night on the new patch, so keep a lookout for that. Or tomorrow afternoon, actually, I have the day of work, so maybe we'll have a more early stream. And you can also find us on Discord and Twitter. The links to those are both in the description below. Thank you for staying with me in this longer than usual video, but that's what we do on our patch note breakdown. I'll see you all again next time.